First bill I'd like to address is HB 1049, if I could. HB 1049 is a very big bill and a very small bill at the same time. It's a big bill because it affects hundreds of thousands of Virginians who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. It adds non-discrimination provisions on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in some 70-odd places in the code. It's also a very small bill. It's a small bill in that it doesn't actually change anything else in the code. It doesn't change how non-discrimination clauses are structured. It doesn't change any remedies. All it does is add sexual orientation and gender identity anywhere you find other non-discrimination clauses on the basis of race, religion, national origin, gender, and things like that. So that's the heart of what the bill does. As I said, it basically says to Virginians, if you're LGBT, you can't be discriminated against in the same provisions in the code where you can't be discriminated against on the basis of race, sex, religion, national origin, etc. So I think it's actually a pretty simple bill in that respect. Happy to answer any questions. If not, I know there are folks who want to testify about it.
So this little simple 39-page bill, is that what you're saying?
It is a simple 39-page bill because all it does is add sexual orientation, gender identity, some 70-odd places. Okay. But the concept is actually really simple.
All right. Are there questions of the patron? All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good evening. My name is V. Lamnick. I'm the Executive Director of Equality Virginia, and we support this bill. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else to speak in favor? Is there anyone in opposition to the bill?
Good evening, members of the committee. Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference. I think the committee is familiar with our broader perspective here. We affirm the dignity of all people. At the same time, we also affirm the right of religious organizations to follow their deeply and sincerely held tenets when they provide employment, housing, and services. There are many different items that are covered in House Bill 1049, and it does have a much further reach than the non-discrimination bill, SB 868, that you passed earlier this session. In the interest of time, I'd just like to address two sections, and they are 2.2-4201 and 2.2-4311 that deal specifically with public contracts. These two sections add sexual orientation and gender identity as non-discrimination criteria in employment for state contractors. This impacts faith-based organizations that have the beliefs that we do about marriage and sexuality when they engage in state partnerships, which Catholic Charities does. And I've brought some people here from Catholic Charities that can speak to that. Before they speak, I do want to hand out, I think there is some simple language that could rectify this. So I do want to hand that out and suggest that there is a way to address this concern. We don't have anybody that right now is offering the amendment, but nevertheless, I would like to just hand this out as an illustration of what could be done here.
Where's the amendment in the code?
Section. Which section in the code are you referring to with it where the amendment is placed?
So it would be in two places. The first place would be in 2.2-4201, and that would begin on line 217 in the bill. And then the second place would be 2.2-4311, which begins on line 336 of the code. And what I would propose adding in both places after the non-discrimination clause, adding an additional clause that says, except that a contractor that is a religious organization may require that all applicants and employees conform to the religious tenets of such organization. And what that would do, if we added that in those two sections, would be to allow us to follow our religious tenets, whether we hire people of our own faith or hire people of different faiths. They would be, conforming to conduct that's consistent with our religious tenets. That would also be consistent with the federal Americans with Disabilities Act. They have a religious exemption clause in there, and they do have this two-pronged approach that includes religious tenets. So I don't want to hold up the testimony from others, but I do want to hand this around just in case folks would like to look at that, and I'd like to provide it to the patron as well. Thank you very much.
All right, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Art Bennett. I'm the president and CEO of Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Arlington. Virginia has two dioceses, Richmond and Arlington. We're kind of the 21 cities in the northern part of the Commonwealth, 21 counties and 7 cities. And we're Catholic Charity, but we serve anyone who really has problems or trouble. We're trying there to help the poorest of the poor. That's our mission. We're a little concerned about HB 1049 because it might jeopardize our ability to help people, and it might leave a lot of the people that we serve in a precarious position receiving less support. And of the 21 programs, we only want to talk about one tonight. One is our refugee program. We have been providing services for refugees the longest in the Commonwealth since 1974, and it brought over 30,000 refugees to the Commonwealth. And this is a contract with Virginia, the state of Virginia, and so we're concerned about that. So I just want to introduce some of my colleagues who are going to talk about the work that Catholic Charities has done. First one I want to introduce is Laurel Collins. She's Associate Director of Self-Sufficiency for Catholic Charities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. So MRS, Migration and Refugee Services, is the largest resettlement agency in the Commonwealth, with 3 offices, a staff of 25, and over 150 volunteers. So as Art mentioned, we've resettled 30,000 since 1975. Currently, we welcome between 400 and 700 refugees per year. Our work begins with securing housing and meeting clients at the airport. We bring them to furnished accommodations and ensure that basic needs are met. Through our 5 federally funded state-administered grants, we help adults secure employment. We assist kids with school enrollment and social and academic adjustment. We connect families with volunteers, tutors, and mentors. We provide school supplies, backpacks, winter coats, and clothes. We also help refugee seniors with becoming U.S. citizens, learning English, and connecting with local senior centers. These programs are holistic and transformative and help our clients to integrate and thrive. Most of our clients are special immigrant visa holders from Afghanistan. These folks work directly with our special forces and the U.S. government in Afghanistan. And due to their service to our country, their lives are in peril. So they're offered a safe haven here in the U.S.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be rude, but frankly, I'm not sure this is relating to the bill.
Disagree. This is services that they provide to the Commonwealth and a contract in the Commonwealth that they're afraid will be compromised by this bill.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see that she's making a point. She's describing what they're doing. She's not describing how it's going to be impacted by the bill.
And I think I can cut this conversation short if I could give
Well,
1 minute.
no, don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Everybody has their say, so.
Okay, thank you. So these clients bring their skills, talents, and linguistic capacity. They make great contributions to our communities. We support them with integration and self-sufficiency. And without our programs and services, these clients would not be able to achieve integration and self-sufficiency as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I hate to interrupt, but I wanted to ask the witness a question sincerely. I wanted to first thank you for your work with immigrants and refugees, but this is really a sincere question. If you had, like a lot in Bosnia and some of the other places in Eastern Europe, they were targeting gay people, even facing death. And I was just curious, do you not, from this bill, you couldn't discriminate. Is your hope that you would want to turn anyone away, or?
Yeah, that's my question too. Exactly my question.
Can I defer to my colleagues? We serve everybody. We provide resettlement services. We're contracted to do so, and
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do, and I thank you for that. I just wasn't sure how the bill would impact that, but I thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
My question is kind of a little different, but similar. I also applaud the work that you do, and I greatly appreciate that work. If a refugee were to come and they were gay, would you still support them?
we don't. I mean, we serve everybody of any faith, any background. And I mean, we don't ask that question of anybody. We're contracted to provide services.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Donovan.
so the answer is yes. You would support them because you don't have any discrimination against anybody for whom you're caring. Yes.
All right. Are there others who wish to speak? If so, please do so quickly so it won't be here all night. So.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. My name is Balaina Lopiso. I am a former refugee who was served by Catholic Charities 14 years ago. I also worked with different capacities for Catholic Charities. Currently, I'm the program director for the refugee program. What I really want to stress is Catholic Charities as agency is a good alternative providing services with limited resources, mobilizing resources from the parishioners and also parishes. And it's a strong agency providing different services for refugees. So this bill might limit our presence providing services for greater community of refugees. In addition to that, also, really, there is a minimal support from federal or state government for these programs. The majority of the support comes from the community, from the churches, from volunteers who are supporting the program. It's also limiting those part of the church, the community who are eager to support the newcomers. In addition to that, what makes Catholic Charities different from other service providers is there are also additional services that can be accessed by new refugees if they are supported by Catholic Charities. So just I want to stress those things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just a little confused. Mr. Chairman.
Where are we here? Oh, Delegate Hashmi. Senator Hashmi.
I'm just a little confused by the last speaker's statements. I don't understand how this bill is going to impact the services that you provide. You've indicated that you do not discriminate with the individuals that you serve. So if you could just clarify, sir, how the bill impacts your work, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'd like to clarify on behalf of Catholic Charities. This would not, what we're seeking an exemption for is not with regard to services, it's with regard to employment. What these two sections say is that your employment criteria, the non-discrimination criteria in employment for a state contractor is that they cannot discriminate on the basis of things that are already in the law, plus adding sexual orientation and gender identity. When adding those two terms, we see the need for additional language to say that in our employment practices, we may also require that all applicants and employees conform to the religious tenets of our organization. And we think that would ensure that in our employment practices, we could still follow our belief, for example, that marriage is the union of a man and a woman. And with that, then we'd be eligible for the contracts and it wouldn't jeopardize these contracts. So it's not the services, it's the employment piece.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, if
Senator
I may,
Donovan.
it's the contracting piece. Is that you would be excluded from a contract based on the values that you have in employment being not aligned with this language in the bill as it's presented without a religious exception for who you employ. And, and that's the issue. It's the contract restrictions at this place is that you would like to continue your fruitful contract in refugee services and others, but you're afraid that your beliefs would obstruct that if this language goes into the bill.
That's correct, and we think that extra clause there that just says that we can require all applicants and employees to conform to the religious tenets of our organization.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a point of
Senator-
clarification, because I think
Senator
I thought I understood this before, but I think I'm now confused. So to be clear, you want to be able to discriminate on the basis of being gay, and the issue therefore is if you're able to discriminate, then you can't get those contracts. Is that the issue?
The issue is that the terms sexual orientation and gender identity have been construed very broadly by courts to include conduct. So, the religious tenets of our organization would be that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and we would expect that employees of our organization would adhere to that standard of conduct. And if this language is not added, then the way that courts have construed the term sexual orientation and gender identity, this would take us out of the ability to continue to provide
Mr.
those
Chairman.
contracts.
Yes, Senator Hashmi.
I just have a real problem with that line of argument. As a Commonwealth, we're committed to non-discrimination, and we have recently just passed bills that secure non-discrimination against individuals in our LGBT community. If we strike this particular language, we are therefore, as a Commonwealth, saying that we are willing to engage or allow discrimination of certain individuals. And so I have a issue with that argument that you just presented.
Mr. Chairman, may I just respond briefly? Okay, so, we're not proposing striking any language. We're proposing leaving all the language in and just adding a clarification that says that we can still follow the religious tenets of our organization in our hiring practices.
All right, why don't we hear from the rest of the people who want to speak? Please try not to repeat things that have been said already or will be said by others, so that we try to get, keep things moving and be able to get out of here at a reasonable hour, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman
Yes.
and members of the committee of the state of Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm so happy to talk to you about today a subject that's both personal and also professional for me. I came here in the state of Virginia as a refugee myself 2 decades ago, and I have chosen the state of Virginia simply because, as Larry Sabato said, that is the mother of American presidents, but it has never been pregnant. But in addition to that, it's a very diverse state where there are a lot of opportunities for employment, and also there's a welcoming community. I now work with, it so happens that I now work also with refugees, and it has been that for the last 5-6 years. And I noticed that there's so many refugees that are coming in America today are still coming for the same opportunities and making the same choices that my family and I made.
Go for it.
So, what I was going to say is that today's refugees are professionals that are coming from, as my colleague mentioned, from Afghanistan mainly. And when they come here, they become self-sufficient very quickly and become part of the society, contributing to the economy of the state, and also becoming, along the way, they, adjusting their status to citizenship. But the work that you see and, the success that you always hear from the refugees comes from what's done behind the scene. It's not only that that we have grants from the state and also from the federal governments, but we are, connected with a large community, mainly from the churches around the state of Virginia, and also there are employers that are supporting our programs. We have also other faith groups that support refugees. And basically, what I'm referring to is that if it would not have been for the faith-based organizations such as Catholic charities, there's no way that refugees would have become self-sufficient so soon. Lately, there were countries from the Scandinavians that came here in the United States just simply to study the American model of resettlement, and they found out, yes, the United States has a free market economy that allows and gives opportunities to people, but also, Americans inherently have families and friends that are immigrants, and they're very open to welcoming refugees. But the biggest part that they found out that why refugees assimilate very well here in the U.S. and become very successful was because the work that the faith-based organizations such as Catholic charities do. We get donations from the parishes. We get volunteers from the other faith-based organizations. So it's very critical. What we do is not only that what we get from the government, from the federal and the state government, but also there are a lot more resources that come from the community. And I think that the success of our clients and the success of the immigrants here in the state of Virginia is mainly from the community that's connected to the faith-based organizations.
All right, we have a question from Senator Reeves.
So, and I'm not sure who can answer this. Maybe someone from the Catholic Diocese can answer this question. But my understanding is the State Department works with the Catholic charities, let's say the Diocese of Arlington, right? And they come in, and they come into this country, and they do the majority of placements, like in my district in the city of Fredericksburg, they come through and they're placed that way. So is this bill saying that because of your fundamental principles as a Catholic diocese of orientation and gender, because you all believe, and that's how you believe, under this bill 217 says the contractor will not discriminate, those are counter to your beliefs as an organization, you would no longer be able to comply with that, so therefore you would no longer be able to have a contract with the government to do placement of immigrants?
This is just one program, and it's not so much, like Jeff said, Jeff Crusoe said, it's not so much the helping the refugees, it's being able to hire people with the same values that we have in the Catholic Church to be able to help the refugees. So Jeff used the example of marriage. The Catholic Church has a different view of marriage maybe than what's being proposed here. Those are fundamental to us in our ability to provide services. So with kind of an exemption as a religious organization, we can continue doing what we're doing. It's just in the hiring, that's where the issue is, sir. Yeah. For example, many of these people here, they're not only not Catholic, they're not even Christians, work for them, but they have the same values that we have at Catholic Charity. That's why they're so successful at helping the refugees, because they have the same values. So if somebody had a different value related to marriage or whatever, that would be a more serious thing. It would be hard for us to integrate.
So. Senator Bell.
If I could ask the gentleman if you could return to the microphone. How long have you been performing the refugee services?
Since 74, 75.
Continuously?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Governor McAuliffe signed an executive order in 2017 effectively doing what this bill codifies. So you've been providing the service since 2017. Your argument is that if this bill passes, you won't be successful or hurt you. Have you not been successful since 2017?
We've been very successful.
Then I think that just goes against your entire argument. This is going to hurt you.
Well, we've been, if I could just add, sir, part of the reason we've been successful is because of our beliefs as Christians, as Catholics. I mean, we serve anybody. Nobody outserves the immigrants and the refugees in the Christian church. Nobody. If, however, we had to compromise our Christian beliefs, that's when it's hard for us. What animates us and propels us is our beliefs. If we had to compromise them in a serious way, that could impact our ability to perform the service.
I understand what you're saying, but since 2017, you've been operating under an executive order which prohibits you from discriminating on this basis. And has it compromised your beliefs? Have you been unable to perform?
We've been able to perform.
So I think it invalidates your argument.
Well, can I address that?
Briefly.
Okay, very briefly. So in the under Executive Order 61, there's a guidance document that allows for case-by-case discretion on these employment criteria, and that is what has enabled Catholic Charities to continue to provide these services. If we codify this without giving that type of discretion, then that would jeopardize these contracts.
All right, are there any others who wish to speak? If so, please.
Good evening,
so
Mr. Chairman
quickly.
and members of the committee. My name is Jersan Marino-Riano. I represent Regent University, Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs. We're a Christian university in Virginia Beach, Virginia, enrolling over 10,000 students, half of which are residents of the Commonwealth of Virginia. The remaining students represent every part of the union. This is a very important conversation, nuanced and complicated. And given the implications of HB 1049, particularly regarding places that provide public accommodation and does not have a robust religious exemption for educational institutions like our own, and maybe another 24 religious universities in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we would like to ask the committee not to report on the bill, but to give us an opportunity to work with the patron and sponsor of the bill and others to craft the kind of language that would advance the common good for our institutions and other institutions as well, to take into account religious exemptions for public accommodation institutions like our own. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Chairman,
Senator
I hate
Evans.
to make the meeting later. I just want to ask the gentleman from Regent a question or two, if I might. When you said public accommodation, what do you have in mind?
Well, as an institution, we, for example, the Virginia Symphony plays at our university, theater, plays, sporting events, those kinds of things are open to the public, and consequently, given the language of the bill, that would affect us significantly.
Okay, and if I could follow up, I called up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I called up Liberty University recently and asked if they would admit gay students. They said they would, that the student conduct, as long as it was all equal, as long as there was no premarital sex that they knew of, I guess, between students of any gender, that was the same code of conduct for whether they're straight or gay or whatever. So I was just curious how it would compromise you in terms of theater groups or whatever if this bill passed.
Anyone from the public can come to our campus at any moment in time. It's an open campus, open university. But I think given some of the language in the bill, and given that we really have had the opportunity to have a conversation with those who sponsored the bill to think about what would happen to an institution like Regent if we're forced to comply in certain ways and compromise our own religious identity. So all we're asking for is a conversation to try to craft language for the bill.
Okay, and just to follow up, Mr. Chair.
Senator Evans.
I'm not sure if it's this bill or maybe it's my bill 868 that was the public accommodations bill that you might not like. But anyway, thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, I'm also with Regent University. My name's Louis Isikoff. I'm Senior Vice President and General Counsel, and I would like to address a few additional points. Regent does have over 10,000 students. We're a firm believer in diversity. Over half our students are members of a minority, and 64% are female. We're also a faith-based organization. Our statement of faith confirms that we believe the Bible is our authoritative source of Christian doctrine and precept. Everything we do from hiring practices into our educational and extracurricular programs is based on this premise. Employees, our student leaders, and students in our divinity school who are in programs leading to ordination have to sign off on the statement of faith. Other students have to at least acknowledge that they're willing to be educated by Judeo-Christian principles. Parents send their students to our schools based on this commitment. Even our large adult learner population knows about our commitment to biblical values. They expect us to follow this, including traditional views of sexual identity. If a student or parent doesn't subscribe to the traditional biblical views, there are plenty of opportunities, countless opportunities for them to get education in Virginia or outside of Virginia. We believe that providing a traditional Christian education provides parents and students a choice in a multicultural, multi-religious country and strengthens the diversity in this country. Parents and students who are seeking a traditional quality education with biblical faith integration would not attend Regent under the current bill. How could we respond to a female student, for instance, that's asked to room with another student who's anatomically male but identifies as a female? Even if the roommate situation could be worked out, there's locker rooms, bathrooms, and other things. In the roommate situation, if we removed one student or the other from that situation, we'd be accused of discriminating. We'd have to fight the matter out in court. So we believe the current bill, even with a limited religious exemption, if it were added, it would dramatically abridge our First Amendment rights and the rights of our students and the parents, our entire community. The patrons bill talks about public accommodations. We do have lectures that are open to the public. The campus is open to the public. The library is open to the public. Dr. Moreno-Riaño mentioned the Virginia Symphony performing on campus. We'd have to stop all that. That would hurt the community. That would hurt our students. The employment exemption in the current bill doesn't have a religious exemption to say, yes, you can hire people of your faith, but it doesn't protect you if you say to someone, your lifestyle doesn't comport with biblical values. And there are Christians who believe one way or the other on this. We've just based our reading on traditional Christian doctrine. So the other bills that Senator Eben, you referred to, they don't. A lot of them don't apply when the organization holds itself out to the public as offering goods, services, or privileges. And we do that on our campus. You know, the First Amendment has two elements. It's a prohibition against the government establishing a religion, but also, more important to the discussion of this bill and the other bills that are pending, it's a prohibition against limiting the free exercise of religion. The present bill, as well as other bills under consideration, clearly adversely affects the free exercise of religion. In some of the other bills, the Attorney General can seek punitive damages without cap, even if there's no complaining victim. Some of the bills prohibit propensity.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be careful.
Senator Eben.
I am friendly to your amendment. I would suggest that you keep your comments concise and targeted to this bill because you're putting your amendment in jeopardy. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would just close then quoting Supreme Court Justice Kennedy in the Burwell Hobby Lobby case. In our constitutional tradition, freedom means that all persons have the right to believe or strive to believe in a divine creator and a divine law. For those who choose this course, free exercise is essential in preserving their own dignity and striving for a self-definition shaped by their religious precepts. Free exercise in this sense implicates more than just freedom of belief. It means, too, the right to express those beliefs and establish one's religious or non-religious self-definition. That's what we're seeking, and like Dr. Moreno-Riaño suggested, we suggest this bill be deferred to let time to work out a balance between the gender identity issue and the First Amendment rights of organizations such as ours. Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Rick Yost. I'm the superintendent of Fredericksburg Christian School, and I'm a district representative for the Association of Christian Schools International. It's the largest Christian school association in the world. We have 24,000 schools across the world and 87 member schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm speaking to you today to ask for your help in amending the bill before us. There are currently provisions that do not clearly allow religious organizations like the Christian schools I represent to operate unencumbered with the free exercise of religion that is guaranteed in the Constitution of Virginia. Forcing our schools to hire people who may be wonderful employees in other organizations but who do not subscribe to the major tenets of our faith could put our schools in great jeopardy, with families who attend our schools largely because of the values that we have. Before my 23 years in Christian education, I spent 22 years in the corporate world, in for-profit, nonprofit, even the staffs of elected officials, or any other kinds of organizations people are hired who will further the mission of that entity. people who align as much as possible with our organizational culture, tenets, and philosophies. None of us in this room would ask someone to further our mission if they did not believe in the major components of it. We're asking you today to amend the bill before us so that the wording is clear with regard to public accommodation and employment with respect to religious entities. It just makes good policy for many thousands in the Commonwealth, and they will benefit from that clarity. Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jeremy Woody. I'm the head of school of a small Christian school in Central Virginia, Ridgeview Christian School. I've heard senators and delegates, both in person, also in session, and even in discussion today, say that the intentions of this bill are not to infringe on those who are overtly religious organizations, such as the one that I'm a part of. And I appreciate the conversations that have been a part of that. The ambiguity surrounding religious protections in regards to public accommodations and employment are very concerning to myself and other ministries like the one that I lead. And it is our request that this committee adopt amendments that, with language consistent with other vetted laws such as ADA and others, to ensure that the stated intentions of these delegates and senators are codified to ensure that their intentions are actually protected. Thank you for your time.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is Bruce Hunter. I'm an administrator of Grove Christian School here in Richmond. In my over 35 years as a school administrator, I learned that one of the key elements to us effectively accomplishing our mission at the school was the partnership between employees and the school administration, between parents and families, and it was all based upon our shared beliefs and our shared support, active support of our statement of faith. And I'm just here to ask that you would include, if this bill goes forward, strong religious protections so that we may continue to hire faculty and staff that will support us and support our mission and tenets. Thank you.
All right. Delegate Levine.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, lots of things to respond to. Let me start with the fact that religions are allowed to discriminate under the law. Even though we have laws against religious discrimination, Catholics don't have to hire Jews to be priests. Ministers don't have to hire, Protestant ministers don't have to hire Catholics, nor do they have to hire Muslims. That's not in Virginia law. We do not require religious organizations to hire people outside their religions. We don't. So that's not in the bill. What is in the bill is a codification of Governor McAuliffe's Executive Order 61. So the only thing this matters is when you have state funding of religion, which I would argue may even be a First Amendment violation when the state establishes a religion. But if we're not talking about state funding of religion, none of that is relevant. Now, when you have state-funded religion, you don't have state-funded theology. So all the discussions about theology, I know of no taxpayer dollars that go to ordination or to training priests or ministers or rabbis. That's all done with private funds. But when it comes to state contracts, Catholic Charities does tremendous work with refugees, and they've done it continuously for a long time, and they've done it under Executive Order 61. Executive Order 61, which was put out by Governor Terry McAuliffe, quote, it requires future state contracting to require prohibitions on discrimination in employment, subcontracting, and delivery of goods and services, including discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Part 2 of the executive order says that the state prohibits discrimination, including that based on sexual orientation or gender identity, in the provision of state services. They've told you that this executive order does not affect their practice. They've told you that it's been continuous. In fact, they've even told you they don't discriminate. If they don't discriminate, all this does, the only 2 sections they've complained of, all it does is codify current law. That's all we're doing. Nothing will change. We're codifying the current executive order that has not bothered them in the past. I am, however, extremely concerned with this amendment, and I'm very sorry that they chose not to talk to me. I did not know of this amendment until they showed it to me just now, You know, the bill's been around for a month. It passed the House weeks ago. No one in this line chose to chat with me about it. So I could have saved them some time, I think, by showing them the executive order. But this amendment has some real dangers to it. What it does is it says that state-funded discrimination on the basis of race will now be legal. Now, currently, you can't fund state discrimination on the basis of race. We all know the case of Bob Jones University. This was a university that said, our religious tenet is we don't like black people. We want to discriminate against them, and we want government funds to do so. Well, now I guess Bob Jones University can discriminate against black people for the first time in Virginia history if this amendment becomes law. This amendment would also allow clear discrimination on the basis of religion with state funds. So you have Virginia funds for a job, but no Jews can apply, no Baptists, no Muslims, maybe no Catholics. You could have a state-funded job where they say, I'm sorry, we don't allow Catholics. That's what this rule does. The other thing it does, and in addition, which is why I think it's a clear violation of the First Amendment, is it says that state establishment of religion, the state establishes a religion by giving funds to that religion, and then allows those religious tenants to take all our taxpayer funds. So you have people of all different religions that pay their taxes, but it only goes to these people. Now, if they don't discriminate, and they say they don't, and I take them at their word, none of this bothers them. But this amendment will allow those that do discriminate to suddenly discriminate for the first time in Virginia history. In addition to being clearly, in my view, unconstitutional, this amendment opens up Virginia to discrimination that's never had. This is a change to current law. All my bill does is add sexual orientation, gender identity to current non-discrimination statutes. This bill, though, allows discrimination against race, against religion, against color, and against sex, and against national origin for the first time in Virginia history. That's why I really wish they'd show me this amendment before just today, because I think I would have shown them that we don't want to suddenly open up the Virginia Code to this discrimination.
All right.
We will pass the bill without this amendment.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
The issue is before the committee now.
Mr. Chairman, speak to the amendment.
Okay.
I will point out that I have supported every non-discrimination bill that has come through this body. We have passed now the language from Senator Eben that will protect in public and private sector employment. And Senator Eben's bill has a phrase in it that specifically, and he can probably quote it better, says that organizations can hire employees of the same faith. This amendment says religious tenets of such organization, which is not far off that line. The issue that is here that is clear and apparent, that is different either than the executive order or in anything else that we've passed before, is that you're changing codes, you're changing in the code the qualifications of contractors to be eligible to contract with the state government. And if you have a religious organization that has a contract with the state government and that religious organization's beliefs are different than yours, they no longer are eligible to contract with the state government. And this is, we're already protected in employment law that we're passing this year. We're protected in all other aspects that they must employ appropriately. But in these two portions, so I would say to you, if the amendment at the end of those phrases is not qualified enough to accomplish the goal of not excluding them as contractors, then perhaps you can offer language that your intent is that they will not be excluded based on their beliefs as contractors with the Commonwealth. And I think we can come up with language that can accomplish that so that the symphony can indeed have a contract with a university that has different, that may have those beliefs as a tenet of their principles.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Sure.
Yeah.
Levine,
So Executive Order 61, which is currently the law in Virginia, and I'm happy to take this word for word, says, this is currently the law and Catholic Charities continues to function under it, says that by the power of the Chief Executive, by Article 5 of the Constitution of Virginia, I hereby order the following: require future state contracting to require prohibitions on discrimination in employment, subcontracting, and delivery of goods and services, including discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. That is current law. Now, I understand some folks may not like Governor McAuliffe's executive order, but we do know it hasn't affected any of the good people that have come and testified because they've done their work. Not a single person has testified that this executive order stopped them from doing their work. All I did was add sexual orientation and gender identity to the current code. If people want an amendment to exactly track this language word for word from Governor McAuliffe's executive order, I'm fine with it. I think it actually does exactly the same thing. In fact, the executive order may be a little broader than my bill. But if that's the wish, to use this executive order, which we know has caused no harm to any of these good people, we can do that. But the idea that we're going to repeal Governor McAuliffe's executive order, which has done no harm to these people, and allow discrimination for the first time in the Virginia Code, I can't accept that. And so again, this is the law. All we're doing is codifying this executive order.
All right, the bill is before the committee. This is-
Can we hear from Jeff on the response? I apologize. I'm late.
All right, this will be the third time at least the third time, if not more.
Thank you for your patience.
We've been at this for close to an hour, so we need to move along, so.
Yes, thank you very much for your indulgence. And just to explain on the executive order, so there is a guidance document that was issued in pursuant to the executive order and after the executive order that clarifies that on a case-by-case basis, the contracting agency can make an exception to the employment non-discrimination provision if they see a cause to do so, so that a faith-based organization can continue to be part of that contract and to offer those contractual services. So we have actually obtained that exception in several of these cases, in all these cases since the 2017 executive order, and that's what has allowed us to continue to participate. What we fear is that if this bill passes and there's no type of exemption language, then that goes away.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves and then Senator Donovan.
Jeff, I'm just trying to figure out a compromise here, and if the religious tenets are described as sexual orientation and gender identity, are those the two that in the religious tenets? Because I do agree with Delegate Levine that the way it's written, it would allow, if part of your religious tenets were not to allow people of different color or race to discriminate against. So the way the amendment's written, it would allow you to do that under those religious tenets, but I think if you could spell out the religious tenets that you're talking about of sexual orientation, gender itself, and list them, that might be more amenable. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out the argument here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to propose an amendment that we include the language that is in the guidance document on a case-to-case basis, that that whatever the language says in the guidance document, that the state can consider exceptions on a case-to-case basis so that we perpetuate the balance that has existed since the executive order was put into place with those guidance documents.
I'm unaware of any guidance language. I'd like to see it. Council, do you have that guidance language? Does anyone have it?
Then, Mr. Chairman, may we take this by for a week until that can be resolved?
There's been an assertion there is this guidance language. Do you have the guidance language?
I don't have it on me. I can certainly provide it. I don't have it on me right now.
Yeah, I was unaware that such guidance language existed.
Thank you. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask that this pass by for the week.
Mr. Chairman, move to report.
We have a request. Do you want to pass by for the week, or do you want us to go forward and take action?
Put it this way. Why don't we maybe look at the motion to report, and if if it doesn't move forward, then maybe we can reconsider. And again, I am unaware of such guidance language. They didn't even mention the executive order. I mean, it may exist. I haven't heard about it. No one has told me about it.
Pick between the two.
Mr. Chairman,
Do you want to go by for the week? If not, then we'll proceed to take action on things.
I think in good faith, it is reasonable if there is guidance language that has enabled a symbiotic relationship between these entities and the state of Virginia, that it would be in all of our best interest to preserve that.
If such guidance language exists, again, this was all by ambush, so I had no idea that there was even a suggestion of an amendment, and I have not seen the guidance language. But
Mr. Chairman,
if that's
follow-up.
what folks want to do, I certainly defer to the will of the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think there was an ambush here. Good Faith's kind of left the building on this one. If they want to work after that, I've got a motion. I made a motion to report. I believe it's been seconded.
All right.
Motion the bill be carried over from the week.
Second.
All right. We have a substitute motion to carry the bill over. Is there any further discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no? No. The chair is in doubt. Let's put it on the board, so.
Ayes 8, noes 5.
Okay.
All right, we'll carry it over for the week.
We'll come back
so
for a week. I
that's-
got a
that's
much
fine.
simpler bill next.
You hope.
I think so. I think so. I'd like to